So in last week's episode, I showed how to protect your cloud secrets with Azure Key Vault. As part of that video, I demonstrated how to access your secrets safely across all your Azure resources using managed identities from Azure Active Directory. Some of the feedback I got was that managed identities were new to many of you. Sebastian even called me out and said while this works great for PaaS services, he didn't know how this could work with IaaS, especially in things like custom Linux VMs. You can. Let me show you how. Dean App here. Welcome to the channel that helps aspiring Azure administrators like you and me to KnowOps and, well, master the Microsoft Cloud. I'm glad you're here. If you haven't yet, smash the subscribe button so that you can be notified when I release new videos each week. So a common challenge when working in the cloud is managing credentials so resources can talk to each other safely. Keeping credentials secure is an important task when it comes to authentication, and no one wants password cruft just lying around. Microsoft solved this with a feature in Azure Active Directory called Managed Identities. It provides a way for Azure resources to request access from the system without you needing to worry about the backplane of credential management. Behind the scenes, a managed identity is nothing more than a special type of service principal in Azure AD. Deep down, it takes care of the authentication portion using certificates, but you don't have to worry about this as it takes care of all of it for you. There are two types of managed identities. The first is a system-assigned one, which is enabled directly on an Azure resource. When enabled, it creates a new service principal and its credentials. And when the Azure resource is deleted, Azure AD will destroy the identity and its credentials for you. It's the whole point of a system-assigned managed identity. The second type is a user-assigned managed identity. It is in itself a standalone Azure resource. It is still provisioned as a service principal, but can be assigned to multiple Azure resources at the same time. And the lifecycle of the identity is managed independently from the resources it's assigned to. This way, you can share a managed identity across related resources. It's really useful when you have ephemeral resources that keep coming up and down all the time, and you want a consistent set of identity access controls on the resource. Why don't we jump into the Azure portal, and I'll show you all this in action. Okay, to get started here, let's just kind of walk through what this demo is. So I happen to have created a resource group called KnowOps. Inside of that, I have a Linux-based virtual machine, which I've called KnowOps VM. And of course, everything that goes with it, its disks and all of its normal stuff, networks and everything. I also have this key vault called KnowOps KV. And inside that key vault, we can see that there's no special access policies right now, other than myself as a user. And I have a secret in here, this one secret, which is called my secret pass. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to demonstrate how to get that secret out of Key Vault from within a Linux-based VM using a user-assigned managed identity. So there's a couple ways we could do this. The first one obviously would be we could just create a new resource. I just go managed identity. And there's a user-assigned managed identity. And I could go through the process of creating that, but I don't want to do it. What I'm going to do is do this in the Azure CLI. And if I was to just go and type AZ identity, I have the ability to create in that group called KnowOps a new identity, which I'm going to call KnowOps user-assigned managed identity, or KnowOps UAE. And we just let that run. So you can see, and this created that identity for me. It has a client ID, the URL to the client secret. It relates to the certificates that's behind the scenes, principal ID, the tenant ID, everything that's there, which is useful. If I go back to the portal and look at my all resources, do a refresh, we can see it right there. And so one of the interesting things to note is where a system-assigned managed identity is attached to the resource itself, there is no way of seeing that resource because it's attached directly and managed through Azure Active Directory. When you create this user-assigned one, though, it is in itself its own resource, and it can then be reused and applied. And applying it's not that hard. We can just simply go into the virtual machine, then go into the identity blade, and we can make a decision if we want to use a system assigned or user assigned identity. But I don't actually want to do that just yet because I want to demonstrate that when I'm inside the virtual machine, I don't have access to the key vault and I can't do anything until I get an access token issued to me from Azure Active Directory, which can only happen once I have some sort of principal that authorizes me to have that. So if we jump back over into here, and we start maybe just by taking a look at the VM and seeing that nothing's assigned to it. I can do that by going AZ VM identity show, and we call that VM KnowOps VM, and it'll return nothing because there is no managed identity assigned to it yet. Now let's go jump into that VM itself. I'm going to SSH over to it. Now, I've just to speed things up, I've actually created two scripts here. The first one's called get token, and the second one's called get secret. And the idea here is I want to be able to get the token directly from Azure Active Directory. Now, it ends up that through the built-in backplane, Microsoft has something called the Azure Instance Metadata Service, which allows us to have a non-routable IP that we can call into to get access to the identity service. So if I was to just edit the script I wrote, you can see how it works. I'm just going to curl, or I'm going to go fetch from a service at 169.254.169.254, which is that Azure Instance Metadata Service. I want to go to the metadata identity OAuth 2 token endpoint, and I want to ask for a token for the resource, in this case, vault.azure.net. So I want to basically get an access token authorizing me to talk to the key vault. And to do that, I need to have the managed ID's client ID. So we can get that back over here. You saw when it first created that managed identity, there was a whole bunch of data that popped out, but you can always go get it later. AZ identity show -n KnowOps UAMI. And I'm just going to pipe this to a little tool that does parsing of JSON, which is how that comes back normally. And I want to just grab the client ID. And there it is. So this is the dedicated client ID for that managed identity. And I'm going to go put that in this script. And if I run that script now, in itself, this should allow me to go and fetch a token, right? Well, let's watch what happens. You'll see it's not. No identity was found. We haven't actually assigned an identity to the VM. And so it's not going to quite work. But that's okay. We can easily just go and assign that identity. So again, if we go back, we were already here. If we go to user assigned and we say add, there is that KnowOps user assigned managed identity. And now that the VM has that managed identity assigned to it, if we go back and try running that again, voila, I now have that access token. Let's make that a little cleaner. So this access token would allow me to talk to the key vault, since that's what I'm asking for access to the resource. Now this isn't actually going to work. Now let me show you why. If I was to, the other script I have was one called get secret. What this is going to do is go directly to that key vault, KnowOps kv.vault.azure.net, to the secret called my secret pass, and I'm passing in for a header the authorization token, that's that access token to the system. Now this would normally work, except that, remember, I haven't authorized that managed identity access to the key vault yet. So if I was to run this, and I need to pass in the access token. So what I'm going to do here is just do a little bash foo here, and I'm going to call into that get token. And we're going to kind of parse that access token out. So now we're going to be sending the access token to get secret, and we're going to go fetch it. But it's not going to get us the secret we want. And watch what happens. Gives us a null. And that makes sense because we're not actually authorized to do that. Behind the scenes, there is an event that's been written to the key vault telling you that access was not authorized for this identity. Now, let's jump into that key vault. Let's take that managed identity and give it access. Now we've given that user assigned managed identity access to read secrets for this key vault. And without needing a password, without needing to worry about certificates, by simply having access to the Azure Instance Metadata Service inside of that Linux VM, I got my password, in my case here, there. So there you go, Sebastian. Secure access to secrets and Key Vault without needing a known password can all be done in a Linux VM by using managed identities. Isn't that pretty sweet? Hope that helps you out. I hope I've opened your eyes to the power of managed identities. Give it a try yourself with your own Azure resources and see what you can do. What do you think? Was this helpful? Let me know by hitting the like button. And if you haven't yet, smash the subscribe button so that you can be notified as I publish new content each week. Until then, thanks for watching, and keep the feedback coming. Who knows, your comments may be featured in an upcoming episode. We'll see you in the next one.